Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and weekend out there. Here to bring you the latest information that we have on Tropical Storm Beryl. It is still a tropical storm. It is still forecast to become a hurricane before making landfall along the Texas coastline. Just two main questions. How much will this system strengthen before making landfall? And where exactly along the Texas coastline will this make landfall? We're still trying to figure that one out, and we will be trying to figure that out over the next 48 hours. And a lot of this is just real-time observation. For example, you look at it right now, it definitely does not look healthy at all. It's really kind of fallen apart over the last, I would say, 12 hours. Really, overnight last night, this really started to just get a lot of dry air mixed with it, especially on the southwestern, the southern side of this system. So we're going to talk about what's going on with Beryl right now, what that could potentially mean for the short-term future of this system, because we're finally going to be done talking about this system here in the next few days. I mean, it's surrounded by land in the Gulf of Mexico. It's just unfortunately in the Gulf of Mexico, which we know is notorious for rapidly strengthening tropical systems in hurricane season. So we just got to figure out what's going to go on with this system over the next couple of days, and eventually, finally, we'll be done talking about this and we can move on back to that just kind of summer flow, summer grind until ultimately there's another tropical system to speak about. So we'll break down all the latest model information. We'll talk about impacts. We'll talk about what could drive this to re-strengthen at the last second, what's steering this, and then of course we'll go over all the information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Saturday across the lower 48. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. I am very behind on comments. It gets like this when it's busy, especially when it's over the weekend. I'll try to have some quiet time later this afternoon to just kind of get caught up with all the comments and things like that. Sorry I'm behind. I take a lot of pride in answering all the comments, even when it's busy. That's big with me on this channel. It's the personal touch that I add. I like to go over every single one of the comments. I know eventually one day it might get to the point where that's almost impossible unless I'm doing this full time, but I'll try to acknowledge everything when I get some quieter time later this afternoon and get back to all you folks on social media through the YouTube comments and all of that. So if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. So let's get rocking and rolling. So let's try to draw on this thing, make sure this is working, and it is. So Beryl looks like a half-eaten sandwich out here this morning. It really does. I woke up and I looked at it about 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, wow, man, you really did struggle overnight, didn't you? And it has, and that's good news. It's good news because, I mean, the more this gets ripped apart, and it did, especially overnight last night. It was looking really good when we did a video yesterday evening. But it's not this morning. A lot of dry air is getting wrapped into the core of this system, and its core has busted wide open now. So there's a lot of dry air getting wrapped in from the western side, southwestern, all the way to the southern side, because remember, you got the cyclonic flow of this system, even though it's a very poor example of that, just because it's a very weakened tropical system now. And this is water vapor loop, by the way. So, you know, the black colors right here indicate dry air in all levels of the atmosphere. The whiter colors, kind of bluish colors, indicate more moist air in the atmosphere. So a lot of that dry air getting wrapped into this tropical system, and that is why it looks the way it does. Now, still an excellent outflow going out like this. Okay, but that doesn't matter if you have so much dry air wrapping into the system. And if you watch last night's video, I mean, it was probably for like 20-30 seconds. I mentioned a little upper trough digging down right here and how that could really throw a wrench into this potentially really re-strengthening. And I think this is going to be a feature for the next 24 hours that's going to prevent this system from really strengthening today. Now, there was always that question whether it could strengthen today, and I think it could tonight. I mean, we might see this improve by the time we're making an evening video with you folks later on tonight. But for now, this system is really struggling this morning. So we just have to watch it. Are we eventually going to get the kind of wrapping back around of these banding features to protect this core, which is right around right there, center of low pressure? So But it's got to watch. It's a lot of real-time observation watching over the weekend, basically. So this is it. Waking up to a half-eaten tropical system sandwich out here, that's for sure. But that's good news, because I think this could play a factor in this making landfall. Ultimately, is maybe a weaker system than what we were thinking around yesterday. But please just know, the Gulf of Mexico can allow tropical systems to rapidly strengthen, rapidly recover. But like I said, right now it is a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Heck, in the next update at 8 a.m., they might bump this down to a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But regardless, I think it will remain tropical storm status. By about this afternoon, still a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm barrel. By the time we get into tonight, some gradual strengthening, 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Tomorrow afternoon, I think tomorrow afternoon, just tomorrow in general, will be Barrel's kind of final boom, if you will, just his last gas before ultimately making landfall and vaporizing and just going away. Okay, but I think tomorrow it'll try to do its thing one more time right before making landfall in Texas. We just got to watch it. Still a tropical storm tomorrow afternoon. Hurricane by the time we get into tomorrow night, 2 a.m. Monday, still forecast to make landfall as a Category 1 90-mile-per-hour hurricane tomorrow, midday, late morning, early afternoon. Remember, I was thinking maybe we'd wake up to the forecast intensity up to maybe 95 to 100. I was wrong. And you know, it was wild. When I went to bed last night, right before I went to bed, I was noticing some of the short-term models were kind of trending a little bit weaker, but they could trend back the other way. And like I said, a lot of this is just real-time watching the system. It's right here. I mean, it's right here. So Texas here, there's your system right here. So, I mean, it's close. You would think that it's going to make landfall today or tonight, but the steering currents is going to really slow down. But hurricane watch is up in the pink right here. So you still got those hurricane watches. I mean, almost all the way up into the Galveston area now, all the way down to Brownsville, and just obviously the coastal regions, not inland, but you get what I'm saying. And then the cone extends, I mean, the center of whatever's left of Beryl is going to go all the way through eastern Texas. And, you know, we'll talk about this more, probably starting, and we're going to talk about it a little bit in this video, but more so starting over the next, I would say, day or so of videos. This is going to bring impacts well inland. Remember, on the eastern side of these tropical systems, it's called the dirty side. So if the core went exactly the way the National Hurricane Center is saying, then this entire side of the system is probably going to get the worst impacts. Probably a tornado threat into here. Okay. It's the dirty side. On the right side, the east side, northeast side of a tropical system, that is where you have a tornado risk. It basically creates its own low-level jet and creates a kinematic atmosphere that supports tornadoes. So that is going to be a thing. And I think Houston, up to maybe Shreveport, Alexandria, Lake Charles, I mean, all the way into the Mississippi Delta as we get into early next week. So that's something we're going to be watching over the next couple days. We'll talk about it more, too, as we get a little bit closer. But more of the traditional look from the National Hurricane Center. S stands for tropical storm. H for hurricane. Makes landfall as a hurricane along the central Texas coastline. Remember, once upon a time, it was we had this cone way down here in Brownsville, even to the Mexico coastline. But still a tropical depression by the time we get into midweek this coming week, you know, over the Mississippi Delta region. And now, as of right at this second, it's an 1,001 millibar low pressure system. So, I mean, it's risen pretty substantially over the last day and a half. 1,001 millibars. It's really slowed down to 12 miles per hour, moving west-northwest still. So, let's look at some of this model guidance, right? Not going to spend a ton of time on this because, like I said, this is more so real-time observation now. But it's still worth looking at, and we'll continue to look at it. This is the latest GFS. We'll start this off tomorrow afternoon. GFS still has this as 1,000 millibar low pressure. It really just tells you that, hey, it does not think that this is going to strengthen much, I mean, basically over the weekend. And we start to get to the tail end of the weekend tomorrow night. You'll see that number does begin to drop. It's a 991 millibar low pressure system as we are getting into tomorrow night. By the time we get into tomorrow, by the time we get into Monday morning, notice how it's a 991 millibar low. I believe this is like the middle of the night. Yeah, this is like the middle of the night, Sunday night. And then by the time we get into Monday morning, it drops like 10 to 12 millibars to a 978 millibar borderline category 2 hurricane. Now, I will say this morning, my confidence on this being a major hurricane, category 3, has dropped. It wasn't high yesterday, but I would say it was getting on up there. But I still think this has a solid chance to be a category 2 hurricane, and at minimum, a category 1. I think the ceiling right now, in my opinion, I would say is like a 100-mile-per-hour category 2 hurricane. We'll see. And I'm going to always give you my personal opinion and takes on this, and I'll adjust it as needed. But GFS has this making landfall as a 978 millibar low hurricane, somewhere between, it looks like the Corpus Christi Bay and the Matagorda Bay, right here in this region right here, well south of Houston. And then it continues to bring nasty impacts across eastern Texas, especially on this side right here, as this cruises on. And then completely, by the time we are, midway next week, we're finally done with Beryl. We're done talking about it. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm about done talking about it. I love talking about the tropics, but holy smokes, this has been wild. This has been a grind over the last 10 days. But I've learned a lot, and I've been enjoying talking about it, but it's just brought some nasty impacts to many people. I'm just hoping that this, really hoping this doesn't do a number on the Texas coastline. We just got to watch it. European, same thing. We'll start off tomorrow afternoon, 990. So it's initializing about 10 millibars lower than the GFS. It's already a 990. It's gradually strengthening. It's moving more north than the GFS. And it's moving a little bit slower also. For example, this is Monday morning, and it's still off the coastline, still trying to strengthen. It's moving more north than anything. Makes landfall kind of north of the Matagorda Bay, kind of between, I would just say north of the Matagorda Bay here. Makes landfall around the same strength as the GFS, a little bit weaker, but as a full-fledged Category 1 hurricane. It's just further north. It's going to bring some nasty right quadrant impacts into Houston, big flooding threat, tornado threats, and same thing. This continues Monday into Monday night, bringing nasty impacts to the rest of eastern Texas. So if you're tuning in, you're from eastern Texas, well away from the coastline, western Louisiana into southwestern Arkansas, this is going to bring some 30 to 40, maybe as much as 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts and a tornado threat and a flooding threat to you guys. So it's not just the coastline. Obviously, the coastline is where you're going to get the worst impacts, wherever this makes exact landfall at. But it's just that classic moving in and hooking feature where everybody on kind of along the low pressure and just east is really getting some really bad impacts. And then we'll look at the icon, just because it's been a leader along the way. But even the icon has weakened, but the icon is still more north than most model guidance. It really brings this close to the Galveston area, still makes landfall just west of that area. But this wants to really bring the core of this system right into the Houston area. But it's much further east than model guidance. Not much, but it's definitely on the east side of model guidance. And it really brings the core of this system right through eastern Texas and brings a lot of impacts to the western half of Louisiana and to Arkansas, even some impacts in the southeastern Oklahoma. So we look at some of this model, guys, as far as the European ensemble. Remember, this makes up 51 members. We're a real close-up look. For example, this is the entire Texas coastline, Mexico here, Louisiana right here. So what else all the members showing? Well, just about all of them except this one little scraggly one down here. All members go into the Texas coastline. Now, I don't think it's no longer a question if it's going to hit Mexico or Texas. At this point, it's a question on where along the Texas coastline is this going to hit and how strong. And I can tell you there's not as many strong members as there was when we did a video yesterday evening. There's a lot of weaker members here, more so category. Some are just strong tropical storms. You still got a few category 2-ish, close to 3 hurricanes in here. But it looks like the common theme, looking at all these L's with numbers by them, which are the millibar numbers, the common theme here is a category 1 to low-end category 2 hurricane, which is pretty much what the National Hurricane Center has been saying over the last 12 hours. So 12 to 24 hours, really. So you got to give them a little bit more credit to that. But anywhere from Brownsville to Houston to Galveston, this entire region is under a threat. So we just got to watch for tweaks here. if this was stronger than it is right now, I would favor. I mean, I would really favor this area right in here. But I think because it's weaker, I think the Central Texas coastline might be more of a thing. We'll watch. Now we take a look at some of the short range model guidance, like the hurricane models. This is the H-Wharf model. It's initializing a little bit too strong, probably 5 millibars. So it's a good 5 millibars too strong. But what this shows is, as we continue to move throughout the afternoon hours, it shows some gradual strengthening of this, but more so just maintaining. By the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, this is a 987 millibar strong tropical storm, low end hurricane. By the time we're getting into tomorrow midday, 986 millibar, probably Cat 1, Category 1 hurricane. It looks like it's moving west-northwest, and then I really think that this is going to two things tomorrow afternoon. I think it's going to dramatically turn north, and then I think that it could really have one last gasp where it really starts to re-strengthen at a pretty moderate pace. Rapid intensification, my confidence is a little bit lower on that, but if it's going to do it, it's going to do it in the last 6 to 8 hours over water, in my opinion. Okay, so by the time we're into tomorrow afternoon, we're dealing with a 982 millibar hurricane. If that's the case, that's not good, because there's still time for this to really get going. Okay, then it drops to, by the time we're into late tomorrow evening, at a 979 millibar hurricane. And then ultimately makes landfall, around a 971 millibar hurricane, which would be a high-end Category 2, borderline Category 3 major hurricane. Makes landfall here. And just so I don't brain fart where this is, let's zoom into this region right into here. Yeah, so it would make landfall just about where the National Hurricane Center forecast has it. So this is where the center of it is trying to say the H-Wharf model is going to go. And then this is, so the H-Wharf model pretty much follows this entire region right here, which, if you do look at some of the impact areas, this is Corpus Christi down here. This is, I believe, the Matagorda Bay right into here. It's Galveston up here with Houston right here. So basically between Corpus Christi and Houston, this is where it's saying the H-Wharf model will make a landfall. So let's go back and find it here. And so that would bring some big time impacts. Big time impacts. This would be a high-end Category 2 hurricane. Okay, and this is the latest. I believe this is the latest 06Z. This was the run last night. Let's see if we do have any runs from the 06Z, and we do not. So it's just a little bit too early for that. They have not ran yet. This might show a weaker scenario. Let's go to the HF A model, and we'll have to go back to the OOZ. As we are getting into tomorrow morning, still a 995 millibar storm, tropical storm, but like I said, it tries to get its act together right at the last second. Tomorrow evening, 983, 984, and then it makes landfall right into this region of Texas, Matagorda Bay region. And if I get some of these geographical areas mixed up, the bays mixed up around Texas, you guys in Texas, feel free to correct me, because I might butcher it. I've never been to Texas in my life, so. But we get into the wee hours of the morning, Monday morning, makes landfall. It's probably a higher in Category 1 hurricane before the sun even comes up. So it moves in a little bit quicker. And then we look, we're just kind of doing this on the fly, guys. We kind of look at the HMON model. What does this show? All right, tomorrow midday, already a 986 millibar hurricane. Then it begins to strengthen to a sub 980 tomorrow evening. And, kind of maintains itself overnight. Makes landfalls around a 979 millibar hurricane, kind of around the same time frame as the HF A model does. But it's south of the Matagorda Bay, so it's a little bit more of a southerly solution, but it brings a lot of impacts into the region. So we'll start to get some of these 06Z model runs coming in soon, and I hate I missed it, but it is what it is. But as far as impacts, guys, we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, spend some time on that. Rainfall, if you live in that little swath right here in the orange color, this deeper orange, that's 8 to 12 inches of rain that is possible. Houston, 6 to 8 inches of rain possible. Corpus Christi, more so 4 to 6. But the The key thing is, look how this brings heavy rainfall a few to several hours inland into eastern Texas. Shreveport going for 4 to 6 inches of rain. I mean, all the way into Arkansas. We'll be able to look at more of this here in the coming days. But I mean, it looks like Dallas, Waco, probably going to be on the west side of the system. You'll probably be away from that eastern side of this tropical system. Not as much rain in areas of Texas where we probably need it in central Texas, but eastern Texas to the kind of southeastern sections of the state, a lot of rain expected. Talking about the chance of flash flooding, as of now, we have a moderate risk in the red. That means there's a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles of any given location. If you live in the yellow area, it's a 15% risk of that. So there will be a risk of flash flooding, just like there normally is with any kind of tropical system. Now we're talking about storm surge. See if we got any updated information. We don't. There's the Matagorda Bay, so I did have it right. Galveston Bay, calling for up to now 2 to 4 inches. No, a little bit more than that, 2 to 4 feet. I'm a little drowsy this morning. If you guys don't notice, the energy's probably a little low. Just honestly wish I could have slept a little longer, but got things to do and had to get this video out a little bit earlier than I typically do. But 2 to 4 feet of storm surge up here, 3 to 5 feet. Obviously, where they're thinking the landfall is probably going to happen. There's probably going to be an area where it'll be more than this. Whoever is getting the onshore flow of this hurricane. And we just got to narrow that down. But there will probably be another area maybe where you could see over 6 feet of storm surge. We just got to kind of fine tune that when we figure out exactly where this is going to make landfall. But the chances to see 50 knot winds or higher, which is 58 mile per hour winds or higher, which is kind of like mid-grade tropical storm force conditions. And right up here to the Matagorda Bay, to the Corpus Christi Bay, in this entire region, the central Texas coastline, you could get, there's pretty much a 30 to 40% chance of that. So I expect that to increase above 50% in this entire region here. And whoever's going to get the core of this system will have an opportunity to get those 100 mile per hour wind gusts, especially if this strengthens at the level that we think it is right now. Now, the time frame to see these winds, this will probably start impacting the Texas coastline tomorrow afternoon. We'll start to get some of those outer bands. So this is the time frame to see tropical storm force conditions wind-wise, which is pretty much 40 mile per hour winds or higher. And you're going to start to see impacts of this tomorrow afternoon. So that's the timeline here. And then we'll kind of zoom into this. We'll look at the latest HWRF model. And this is a predicted winds, not wind gusts, but just kind of wind speeds. And if something like the latest HWRF model was to be correct, okay, in this core right here, that is 60, 70, 75 mile per hour wind gusts. Even in that kind of pinkish color right here, 70 to 75, maybe closer to 80 mile per hour wind gusts. So the latest HWRF model, if this was correct, makes landfall around 4 to 5 o'clock Monday morning, before the sun even comes up. So this is my concern. We'll back this up a little bit. This is my concern. You got the flow around this hurricane, obviously moving cyclonic, just like this. Okay, and I'll kind of get these arrows back off. So you get an 80 mile per hour wind gust in the eye wall of this, and this is just wind speed. It's not even, I keep saying gusts, but it's just wind speeds. It's like consistent winds. So this is even gusts. Your gust could be higher than this. But you see how the thing that I'm worried about is whoever gets kind of the right, kind of the east, the northeast, and northern quadrant of this eye wall, it's going to shove a lot of water into these bays along the Texas coastline. So there's going to be a period where the storm surge really escalates fast. I mean, you're even getting water pushed into the Galveston Bay. Galveston, always struggle with that word, into Houston. But along this entire region, big time onshore flow in this entire region, if the HWRF model is correct. And I think it has a good handle, especially on where this makes landfall. I mean, it's right in tune with the National Hurricane Center forecast right now. I like the idea of this making landfall right around here. But it could go all the way up closer to Houston. But this would bring a lot of water into these bay areas too. A big one being the Matagorda Bay. This would bring a lot of water in this area. Now, on the kind of the southern side of this, you're getting winds getting pushed off the coast, offshore flow. This is onshore flow, okay? Onshore flow, offshore flow. So whoever's getting hit by this quadrant of the storm right here is going to get the nasty storm surge. That's how it is with any tropical system, depending on which direction it's kind of moving in from. But, you know, this would bring the worst storm surge moving in around the wee hours of the morning, Monday morning. So now if you go from the latest European model, same thing. It has the worst conditions, maybe a tad bit north of the Matagorda Bay, but this is predicted wind gust off the Euro. Remember, not as aggressive as the one I showed you yesterday evening, because yesterday evening's Euro had it making landfall as like a stronger storm system. So you had some 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts in there, but this brings 80, 90, 95-mile-per-hour wind gusts just north of the Matagorda Bay right here into this area in Texas. And just a wider look at Texas here, this would bring some nasty wind gusts well inland too. So we just got to watch, and we'll fine-tune these areas too, but this will bring tropical storm force conditions deeper into eastern Texas. Now we look at the GFS, and it's a little bit further south. Okay, this would actually get south of the Matagorda Bay, closer to like the Corpus Christi area. So the core of this system would move south, but I would say this would actually increase the storm surge area for like the Matagorda Bay area. So we just got to fine tune this. We got to figure this out. GFS is a little bit further south and west. So what would allow this to re-intensify? Well, it's struggling like crazy right now. And I think it's been a combination between, it's been sitting in relatively cooler, definitely, and I wouldn't say probably, it's definitely the coolest waters in the Gulf of Mexico. And that is right off the northern side of the Yucatan Peninsula. It kind of came off this area right into here. Sea surface temperatures are actually like in the maybe upper 70s, just into the low 80s into this area. But this is going to gradually move, with the system being kind of right into here. This is going to move into some much warmer waters. 29, 30 degrees Celsius. When you kind of convert that to Fahrenheit, I mean, that's around the mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit, sea surface temperatures. So they're pretty warm. It's like a bathtub in most of the Gulf of Mexico. So that is going to allow this to, you can check that off the box. That's definitely going to be there. No doubt about it. Okay, let's get this back off your screen. Next thing you look at is the upper wind flow. So this is winds at about 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. So we'll start around midday today. One of the reasons why I think this system's struggling right now, obviously with the land interaction, we know that, but even struggling after it's over water right now, a lot of people might be wondering, well, why isn't this re-intensifying now it's over water? Well, you see this feature, you see these little streamlines that have like arrows like this. You see these little embedded arrows. Well, you notice how right in here it dips down, and then it kind of dramatically goes back up like this, and then it kind of goes like that. So there's a little embedded upper level trough right here. And the flow around this trough is really, I think, lashing out on Beryl right now. And I think this is bringing a lot, I know it is, it's bringing a lot of dry air into the circulation of this system. And I mean, guys, you can see this pretty darn well on Water Vapor Loop. And one thing I'll draw on this really quick here is it's also kind of missing, and I talked about this last night, a pretty favorable setup, which is right into here. This is what we call an anticyclonic flow. Beryl is positioned to the west of this anticyclonic flow. If this L was right here where I drew this check, I would be very worried right now, much more concerned, because it would have almost a no shear environment and it'd be in some warm waters. But it's not. It's positioned a little bit further away, and it's actually getting lashed out by this little weak upper trough that's digging down the pattern. Now you get this back off. You can see how this is affecting this well if you go back to Water Vapor Loop. Remember how I talked to you about how the black colors on the screen is dry air? Well, there's your dry air, and you can see it's digging down right here. I mean, you can see it pretty well. Now, because this has that cyclonic flow to it, it's basically yanking on this dry air being caused by this upper trough, and it's taking that dry air and it's pulling it into the circulation of this system. So I mean, you can see this pretty well, and one of my big jobs here is to explain this where you guys can understand, but you can see it very well on water vapor loop. And when you compare it to what the models are saying is going on around today, it matches up pretty well. Now watch what happens here. This still affects this storm into this evening. You can still see how it's dipping down right here. But watch how it goes away at the last second into tomorrow morning. All of a sudden, you're not really seeing that dip right into here. There's nothing really doing like that anymore. There's going like that a little bit, but it's pretty much eroded. Now, you're seeing these streamlines going like this. Okay, and that is your jet stream dig from this trough digging down to the central U.S. This is actually going to help improve the upper outflow of this system. It's going to yank on this system, and that mixed with the fact that this little upper trough feature is gone, this will have an opportunity, which is Beryl, to really strengthen as it's approaching landfall. I think at the last second, meaning the last 12 to 18 hours of this system, it's going to have dramatically improved conditions to really strengthen. And you can tell as that number begins to drop right before landfall. And you can see this well if you actually look, and we're going to kind of look at this, go back to the H4 model and back this up a little bit, and then look at moisture. So right now, there's a lot of dry air. And I honestly think there's more dry air than what this is showing. In fact, let's see if we can actually get a better representation of this. And let's go to this right here. So, I mean, even this isn't initializing very well. I think there's a little bit more dry air on the bottom side of the system than what's showing. But if you notice, most of the moist air is on the northern side of the system. And as we continue, it continues to show that this system is going to struggle with dry air. And I know I keep flipping back and forth. I'm just trying to find the best representation of this. We should have just stayed with the other one. We're kind of getting everywhere now, guys. But I think this is a great way. This is midday today. Look at all the dry air. You see all the dry air right here in the kind of brownish shaded colors, and then you see all the moist air kind of pushed off the one quadrant of the storm. Well, this continues. A lot of dry air continues into this evening. I mean, it's wrapping around an entire half of this system, all the way to the east side now. Now, as we start to get into tomorrow, there's still dry air there, and we're going to actually have to flip back to this one because the 06Z run is not finished. There's still dry air as we're getting into tomorrow morning, kind of wrapping into the system. But watch what happens as we start to get into late tomorrow morning, tomorrow midday. All of a sudden, this has moist air wrapping it completely around that low pressure. It gets rid of that dry air to the core. The core is shrouded in very moist air, and then this will have a chance to strengthen upon landfall. There's dry air wrapping around kind of the broader area of the circulation, but in the interior area, it's very moist, and this allows this to really strengthen. It's protected by that moist environment. No dry air getting kind of mixed in with the actual low-level circulation. So sorry for the back and forth there, but just want to kind of give you the best representation of that. Now, talking about steering currents, guys, and I think we're going to gradually kind of get away from this because I think that at this point, we kind of know this is where this is going. It's going to the Texas coastline, but I keep trying to explain this for any new viewers that are wondering why this is kind of dramatically turning towards Texas when maybe a few days ago it looked like it was heading towards Mexico. Well, you see this blue area, that's indicated by lower pressure, red area, orange area, that's higher pressure. Flow around both of these features are different. So the flow kind of going around the sides and the bases, both of these sides and the base of this trough is like this. Okay, it's digging down and it dramatically goes like this. The flow around this ridge is going like this, so it's different, and going like this. Flow around low pressure, which is Beryl down here, our blue blob, it's going like this. Okay, same thing with the flow around this. So if this was to keep going, it would keep going like that. But you kind of get what I'm saying here at this point, right? So these are all these kind of features out here where the flow goes one way and the other. Get this back off. So the system down here is kind of in a stagnant airflow, and this is initializing for this afternoon. It's not feeling the flow going off the base of this trough very much. It's definitely not feeling this much. and it's certainly not filling the ridge over the west. So it's just kind of chilling down here. There's a weakness in the pattern, but this weakness kind of allows this system to slow down and to just try to figure out where it wants to go. Well, any kind of somewhat even strong tropical system is always want to gain latitude, wants to go poleward, wants to go further north. So this system is going to try to get north. The more it strengthens, I think the more northerly it will go, because a stronger system wants to gain latitude. The further north this system gets, okay, you can see that little blue blob down here. At the same time, our trough kind of inching south. It's probably getting a little tug from this little bridge extension too that's kind of helping to aid it north also, because it's kind of moving back in, if you will. And I think this little upper low has been a factor into this too, but just not worth getting into right now. But here comes our system. It's really starting to feel the influence of this trough. At this point, this is about to make a landfall into Texas. Our trough still right here, kind of weakening, but it's closer, and our system is closer now. So our tropical system right here is going to feel the tug of this and start to, not only turn north, but actually start to turn like north-northeast, because it's feeling the flow around this trough. That mixed with the fact that we got this ridge kind of trying to extend back into the southeast, and the flow around this ridge is kind of going like this. So you kind of have two flows kind of working together to kind of yank this between this trough and the ridge. So this is why this has been trying to get north. I think the number one thing that caused this to start to go north is just the flat out weakness that this huge trough created between both of these ridges. Because if you kind of go all the way back, right, we had this ridge over the southern section of the country, but this trough was on the way, and this was around 4th of July. And then as we're getting into today, that trough basically made that ridge vanish over here, creating this weakness for this system. If all this orange right here that you're seeing was extending over this region still, this would probably push this more so back into Mexico, which is what we were thinking several days back. So hope that makes sense. I want to explain that always to my new viewers, and even for the returning viewers who just might not quite understand it the last few times I've explained it. So let's talk about what could potentially happen weather for today. And folks, I do want to, I know people say, Mitch, don't apologize, but I'm just like that. It's not that, I just want you guys to know that I care. At the end of the day. So I know I got regular viewers. They're very loyal. They tune in every single day, even if it's the most boring weather day possible out there. So I'm sorry I haven't gotten quite as detailed as I normally do. My main focus has obviously been the tropics for obvious reasons. But I have to stay true to my daily forecast. I just have kind of zoomed through them, and I don't think today will be any different. I'm probably going to work through it pretty fast. But we do need to figure out what's going on. The good news about today is we're going to enter a very rainy pattern, I think, for areas of the country that's really need the rain, like the Carolinas, the Southeast. I think today will be day one of it. But as far as what's going on right now, a little bit of flow on top of the northern Rockies moving through Montana, a little bit of rain shower activity through the Carolinas, northern Nebraska, a little bit of activity in the southern high plains, and a little bit of light rain dancing around across the deep south. The Northeast definitely is the most active this morning, with some shower and storm activity kind of surging from the southwest to the northeast throughout New England area, waking up to a soggy Saturday morning. Even some rumbles of thunder probably out there. Now, watches, warnings, advisories. We do not really have, well, we have the hurricane watches down here, but that's about it for now. Heat advisories up once again for the southeast. Excessive heat warnings, a very hot day expected. But the difference between today and yesterday is we're going to have more widespread rain chances. But you got excessive heat warnings all the way up to the Delmarva, New Jersey. Brutally hot. Not only hot, but humid day. Heat advisories up for areas of Texas, southern New Mexico. Flood watches up for Oklahoma. And just a parade of heat alerts across the western U.S. combined with red flag warnings. Just got to watch out for those wildfires, right? So heat advisory in the orange, the excessive heat warnings in more of that purple color, and then more of the kind of bright hot pink color is red flag warnings, where it's starting to get quite dry in those areas. So excessive rainfall outlook. Look, check out mine. If you guys wonder where I live in central South Carolina. If you're a new viewer, I live in a place called Lexington, South Carolina. We're outside of Columbia. We haven't gotten a lot of rain lately, so we actually are under a slight risk. But in this yellow area, that is where we have a 15% risk of flash flood. guidance being met, rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. So we're gonna start to get a lot of rain over the next couple of days for sure. But everybody else in the green, just a 5% risk. As far as severe weather, we're back up to having slight risk again. So from Norfolk, Nebraska down to the panhandle of Oklahoma. This does include western sections of Kansas, central sections of Nebraska, and a very small section of extreme eastern Colorado. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, marginal risk in the dark green. Tornado risk, not a big tornado risk today, guys. Severe weather season has kind of gotten a little quiet, but it's good news. We expect this time of the year anyways, with just kind of the dog days of summer entering, the jets really far north, and all those things. Wind threat, yellow, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. Hail threat, we do have a risk of significant hail. In the yellow, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, and in that black outline region, the 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Now, a closer look at the southeast today. We'll kind of just take a broad look at this. But as we're getting into about mid-afternoon, numerous showers and storms across the deep south, especially central Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia. You guys are going to get a good shot at showers and storms, tropical downpours dancing around Florida. And then this becomes even more widespread for southern Alabama, even some action in southern Mississippi, but not as much as to your friends to your east. Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, widespread shower and storm activity. Now, I'm sure somebody's not going to get a drop of rain. It's just the way it goes in the summer. But I think everybody has a decent shot. That's for sure. And if you don't get it today, we'll have another shots throughout the week and the weekend into next week. But look at all this action kind of dancing around here, and then we get into tomorrow morning, and then it calms down. So just widespread shower and storm activity. And there's our barrel starting to enter your screen down here off the coast of Texas. But rainfall, where I think it'll be the most, is here in the Carolinas, southeast VA, all the way into Georgia. But look at South Carolina, North Carolina. You see how it's kind of just a skinny corridor where you guys could get an inch, maybe as much as 2 inches of rain. Somebody's probably going to get 2 inches of rain today if you just kind of get hit by a storm that's really stationary. And these will be slow movers, guys. They will be. So, they're kind of going to pop up. I mean, you're going to feel it. By about midday today, it's going to be so hot, you're just going to want to go on and just stay in for the rest of the day. Unless you're near a body of water, a lake, or you got a pool or something like that. It's just kind of one of those days where it just gets too hot to even go outside. Just feel for people who really have to work out in it. We certainly, do. I know I do because I used to have to work out in it. I used to work in hot warehouses and outside. So I totally get it. I do. I've been there, done that. I am blessed to be able to work inside now. But anyways, it is brutally hot for sure. Unbearably hot. But the northeast today, you're dealing with a lot of activity with a weak low heading off to your north up here in Quebec. This is bringing some shower and storm activity throughout Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. I mean, we could even get... I'm actually surprised there's not a marginal risk of severe weather. I mean, this is getting into early this afternoon. Look at these little storms going through Vermont, New Hampshire, into western Maine. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of upgrade to a marginal risk up here. We got some storms up here in Quebec, even areas of Ontario. Look at these storms this afternoon in southern New England. So, I mean, I think there is a risk of strong to severe storms in the northeast today. So just be aware of that. Where exactly are they going to be? I would say it favors more of, like I said, the New England region, Vermont, New Hampshire. I mean, but even all the way down to southern New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Mass, maybe as far south as Long Island, but definitely Maine will have a good shot at this too. So, south central U.S. through midday, pretty quiet. Then we're starting to feel a little bit of moisture from this tropical system. But this is mainly just driven off other things. But we're going to get some downpours across central and south central Texas, along the Texas coastline. Another day with just some downpours across the Louisiana coastline. And then these storms that kind of surge down into northern Kansas. And we could have some storms in the eastern Colorado too if they form. But if you live in northern Kansas, watch out late this afternoon into this evening. Some storms will try to fly through. They might weaken by the time they get into like the Kansas City area. But then we're going to have another organized area of shower and storms probably waking up to tomorrow morning across central Kansas, southern Nebraska, maybe extreme northern Oklahoma. So we'll watch for that. North central U.S., some energy will get going. No doubt here in central Nebraska, through maybe even eastern Nebraska, we are going to have an organized area of storms that could pack damaging winds, very small tornado risk, but there's always a risk with any kind of risk of storms. And then a chance of significant hail. So if you live in central Nebraska today, big storms, scattered storm activity possible, lacking probably some thermodynamics up here, but you'll see that spin. Watch out. Omaha, Lincoln, line of storms could work through late this afternoon to this evening. It'll lose its steam by the time we get into the northern sections of Missouri, Iowa, and then by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, still leftover of this energy will be swinging around this upper low, and we'll wake up to a rainy start in western Wisconsin tomorrow. So we'll watch for that. Damaging winds, large hail in Nebraska certainly going to be the biggest threat. Now the western U.S., besides some energy kind of riding down the northern section of this ridge in Montana, we'll have a little bit of shower activity up there. This will try to make it all the way into northern Wyoming, and then it'll diminish with the loss of daytime heating. But the immediate rest of the western U.S. is being dominated by the ridge of high pressure, stagnant, hot, flowless air. It's going to make the temperatures unbearable out there. Now, temperatures across the central and eastern U.S., it's not too bad across most of the area. It's really not. I mean, you look at temperatures 70s and 80s across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. It's just when you get south of this cold front boundary created by this trough, unsettled weather, hot, humid, soupy from the New York City through the Delmarva, the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast down to Florida, which is just typical. 80s and 90s across the deep south. And honestly, it's not too bad across Texas, considerably speaking. I mean, I think you guys would take 80s and 90s compared to what you've seen lately. The northern terrain of the country, the north central U.S., northern Rockies, 70s. I mean, not bad, but it's pretty brutally hot. I mean, even getting kind of warm across some of the bigger cities along the coastline of California, but you guys are always saved from the cooler waters of the Pacific. Hot day in Las Vegas, hot day in Phoenix. The Death Valley, very hot, and just hot in the valleys of California, even all the way up into Washington, Oregon, and Idaho into the lower elevation areas. Folks, that's all I got. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you again soon.